Privyet. Hello everyone. You're on the Slavic News Channel, and in this video, we'll discuss the most significant updates on the Russian-Ukrainian conflict. We have a lot of interesting updates, so let's begin. First, we're going to talk about the south, the nearest direction where the Russians continued their offensive operation. And during the previous night, the Russians managed to cross the river of Kashligak and to take under control a significant number of fortifications in the trenches of the armored forces of Ukraine. We're talking about this part. As you can see, we have changes on the ground, and the most important changes on the ground are completely confirmed by different geolocations. So the Russians took under control this small bridgehead. Let's take a look at the video. In this video that was published by the Russian sources, we can see the movements of Russian convoy with a significant number of armored vehicles. The Russian convoy had a few tanks, a few personal carriers, and significant number of infantry. This attack, as you can see, took place on the Ukrainian side of the river of Kashligak. The river of Kashligak goes through the villages of Pavlovka, Prechestovka, Zolotaya Niva, and further in the direction of Velika Novoselovka. So once again, let's return back to the video. We see a Russian tank that was clearing the road for attack. We see a significant number of personal carriers that were moving after him. We see the Russians attacking the Ukrainian positions, possibly Ukrainian positions. And there are, as you can see, a lot of geolocations, a lot of places where the attacks took place. And the edge position of the armored forces Russian Federation was geolocated in exactly the area that the Russians managed to reach. Once again, the Russians were attacking from the village of Prechestovka using these roads of attack. And this is the edge geolocation that we managed to find out. Later, we got additional video from the same direction. We have the video how the Russians managed to capture a significant number of Ukrainian soldiers and that the Russians were moving them back to the mainland. So probably obviously successful attack from the Russian side. And most likely the Russians by this attack are trying to encircle the Ukrainians in the city of Uglidar by attacking the city from the western flank. Now, let's go back to Vodiana. We have changes on the ground based on the video of how the Russians destroyed the coal mine. So small corrections just based on the video. Furthermore, we have additional video that confirms that most likely the northwestern part of coal mine South Donbass number 3 still remains under complete Ukrainian control. In this video, we can see a number of several Russian FPV drone attacks on the edge Ukrainian positions. So based on this video, we continue keeping this territory under complete Ukrainian control. Furthermore, during the previous 24 hours, the Russians conducted massive missile strike artillery preparation in the city of Uglidar itself. So we can't tell for sure when exactly the Russians are planning to begin full-scale offensive, but most likely very soon they are planning to begin doing this. Most likely the Russians will try to get as close as possible to the road between 2425 between Uglidar and Bogoyevlinka. And as soon as the Russians are able to cut this road, or at least to establish physical control, fire control that can lead to significant losses from the Ukrainian side while we're using the road, then the Russians will begin offensive and the Ukrainians will be forced to fall back. So a lot of military experts are saying that most likely the Ukrainians are not planning to fight for Uglidar. They will abandon their positions as soon as they understand that they might be encircled by the Russians very, very fast. And in this video, we can see the process of how the Russians continue bombing and attacking to the village of Bogoyevlinka, which is a very important logistic hub for the Ukrainians. Ukrainians are using this territory for supporting and supplying their forces in the city of Uglidar, in a coal mine, South Donbass number 3. Furthermore, we have additional video from the line between Shakhtarsk and Zolotaya Niva. In this video, we can see a Russian FPV drone attack on Ukrainian tank that was trying to reach the line of combat contact and to attack the Russians. And this is a very interesting and very weird video, because in the first part of the video, we can see how the Russians destroyed the tank. And in the second part, we can see how the Russian soldiers managed to capture 2 Ukrainian officers who were probably running the tank. And this event took place here. And this is obviously significant progress of the armed forces of the Russian Federation as well. Anyway, summarizing everything, all these updates, all these events, we can make a conclusion that we can start counting days for Uglidar. Very soon, weeks, 1, 2, 3 weeks, and the Ukrainians would be forced to fall back to the line between Novokranka, Shakhtarsk, and Bogoyevlenka. Now let's move forward, and let's continue our discussion about the Kharkiv direction. Today, we have additional changes on the ground according to different mappers. And pro-NATO mappers confirm additional Russian progress on the ground. And as a result of offensive operation, the Russians managed to establish complete control over the northern part of the prison, Seladovskaya prison number 82. Currently, there are very heavy clashes for the southern part, but most likely the Ukrainians would be forced to fall back. Meanwhile, the Russians are pushing in the eastern part of Maximilianovka towards the western part. So, most likely, during the next 24 hours, we're going to receive additional updates exactly from this part. Now let's move forward and let's talk about the line between Seladovo and Gurnik. Today, pro-Ukrainian neutral mappers confirmed additional progress on the ground. The Russians managed to answer Gurnik from the north. And furthermore, according to different mappers, the Russians managed to answer the village or the town of Gurnik from the northeast. So this part was also captured. This is something like a foothold of armored force of Russian Federation for further development in the southern direction. Very interesting updates are coming from the coal mine. Today, on the 21st of September, we got confirmation from pro-Ukrainian mappers. So, summarizing everything, as a result of clashes during the previous few days, the Russians managed to take this territory under complete control. The Ukrainians, from their side, tried to counterattack the Russian forces. They sent significant number of armored vehicles to restore control over the coal mine. But Ukrainian vehicles were ambushed and destroyed. In this video, we can see Ukrainian convoy, Ukrainian reinforcements that were heading towards the coal mine. But the Russians were watching and following them. And furthermore, the Russians managed to mine the road right in front of these tanks. And the tank was destroyed on the minefield. So this is the situation. Currently, we don't have the video with the flag in this coal mine or Russian presence. So we're going to keep this territory as contested area. But most likely, the territory was captured indeed. And during the next 24 hours, we will improve these positions in Russian favor. Let's talk about Seladov. Today, we received additional reports from different mappers that the Russians managed to improve their positions and to take under control the tree lines, fortifications, and the strongholds in the southeastern part of Seladov. This is a very important progress. Most likely, during the next few days, the Russians will be able to take under control the eastern part of Seladov. This one because the Ukrainians, if they continue staying there, they will suffer significant losses due to being semi-encircled by the Russians from the north, from the east, and from the south. So the Ukrainians, if they are here, they will be forced to fall back further in the western direction towards more reliable positions. As you can see, the Russians, after a very short operational pause, resumed their attempts to attack further in the western part of Seladov. Basically, mainly, the Russian operational pause was connected with logistics, with the process of improving this logistics, because now the Russians have possibilities to support their forces through Nitolovo, Makarovka, along M30 road, and this now allowed the Russians to move further and faster. Now let's talk about the Novogradovka direction. As you can see, we have a lot of changes on the ground. The Ukrainians, during the previous 24 hours, conducted additional attempts to counterattack the Russian forces, but most of those attacks were repelled by the Russians at the beginning stage. In this video, for example, we can see another trophy. The Ukrainians managed to reach the border on the outskirts of Novogradovka. Probably they managed to land their infantry, but then they were destroyed and the Russians captured this armored vehicle. Furthermore, a few more vehicles were destroyed in the vicinity of Pipokrovsk itself, also the same process. The Ukrainians just began their offensive, and basically they were destroyed while moving towards the city of Novogradovka. The same story took place a little bit in the south, further in the southeastern direction. In this video, we can see Ukrainian Bradley that was heading towards the Novogradovka, towards the northwestern part, but this Bradley was destroyed as a result of anti-tank missile strike. So this is very important, because it's very important to understand where is the Russian positions. Most likely, the Russians were attacking the Ukrainian Bradley from the landfill of Novogradovskaya, number 3. So this is the area where the Russians most likely were attacking, because if the Russians were closer, that means that we need to change the map. Now let's talk about this territory, about Grodovka. Also, pro-Ukrainian sources confirmed that the Russians managed to establish almost entire control over this village of Grodovka. They took under control the northwestern part of the village. So we have additional changes on the ground, for now just contested, but let's wait for additional geolocations. And according to neutral mappers, the Russians managed to take under control the village of Kratoyr completely and to reach the outskirts of the Krasnoyarsk. I'll remind you that during the previous weeks, we got lots of videos of how the Ukrainians were counterattacking using robots, infantry, and so on. But those attacks were repelled, positions were cleared, Ukrainians were defeated, and the Russians resumed their attempts to move further in the northern direction towards the village of Mykolaievka with the purpose to establish complete control over this territory. So currently the main Russian objective, the main Russian goal is to take under control this dense network of fortifications, and this is the objective for the next 3 weeks. Now let's move further and let's talk about towards New York agglomeration, because we have significant changes on the ground as well. The Russians, as a result of offensive operation, managed to take under control the citadel, more than 60% of the citadel. This progress was confirmed by pro-Ukrainian mappers and by the video, by real geolocation we'll discuss in a minute. And also we have additional changes on the ground according to pro-Russian and neutral mappers. As you can see, the Russians improved their positions a little bit in the eastern part of Toretsk, and as for geolocation, let's discuss this in details. The video has very poor quality, and in this video we can see the conversation of 2 Ukrainian soldiers, and in front of your screen they're creating a bomb, a very big bomb, 80 kilos bomb, and the Ukrainians were using drones for this, for carrying this bomb to the Russian positions, and they sent the bomb, this drone, and then there was a very heavy explosion. In all this video, we can hear some conversations of Ukrainian soldiers. Now, this is the explosion, and this is exactly the building where explosion took place. The building was geolocated. This is it, and according to Ukrainian sources, they were attacking the Russian positions right in front of this, right inside of this building. Based on this video, we have adjusted the map, and obviously, this is significant progress, and basically the Russians managed to split the city of Toretsk in 2. Now, there are parts with the block of Zabalka and the coal mine, and the second part is the northern and the eastern part with the landfill and the terracotta of coal mine towards Vahilia, which is very important. Now, the Russians will handle with every single part separately, which will make this operation much faster. Now, let's move further, and let's talk about Makiivka. We have additional changes on the ground according to different mappers. The pro-Ukrainian sources confirm complete control over the village. There are very heavy clashes. The Russians continue concentration of their forces before moving further in the southern and in the western direction. Most likely during the next few weeks, there are going to be very heavy clashes, and the Russians will try to take under control the village of Nevskaya by attacking this territory from the north and from the south. As for the north in Kupin's direction, we haven't received anything special, just small reports about additional Russian progress to the west of Peshchana without any changes for different mappers. Now let's talk about Volchan's direction. During the previous 24 hours, the Russians conducted a number of attacks towards the Ukrainian positions in the village of Tika, and this attack was geolocated. The Russian sources published the video of the Ukrainians. In this video, we can see Russian attack. Significant number of armored vehicles were moving in the southern direction from the Russian positions towards the village of Tika. The Ukrainians were trying to slow the Russians down to attack them. And in the final episode, we can see the Russians landed in the area and began clearing operations inside of the territory of the village. So most likely during the next few days, the Russians will be able to secure the village completely, and this is going to be a significant victory for the armored forces of the Russian Federation. Then the Russians will be able to cross the river Vovcha and to begin clashes for Vovchinsky Kutra and Pakolinya. Now let's move forward and let's talk about the Kursk offensive. Today we have additional changes on the ground according to different mappers. And today, the NATO mappers confirmed the Russian progress in direction of the village by the name of Sverdlikovo. The Russian sources reported about this progress yesterday. And now we see that different mappers begin the confirmation process, which is very important. If the Russians, we've been discussing this situation for many times, if the Russians are able to take under control Sverdlikovo and to move further in the eastern direction towards Lebedevka, then this is going to be the beginning of the Sergei Cauldron, and we can start counting days when the entire direction collapse under the Russian pressure and significant number of Ukrainians to be encircled. As for the other directions of Sergei area, we have a lot of significant number of FAP strikes all over the entire line of combat contact. Lots of explosions, Ukrainians suffer losses, but as for now, they can't do anything. Now let's talk about Giskovo direction. During the previous 24 hours, we have additional video of how the Ukrainians were attacking the Russian positions. The video was confirmed and published by the Minister of Defense of Russian Federation. In this video, we can see Ukrainian tank attack with a significant number of armed vehicles and personal carriers. Some of the vehicles were destroyed. Some of the vehicles managed to reach additional trenches and the fortifications. So if we return back on map, we see that we have changed the color of map and we have added additional territory under complete Ukrainian control. So once again, the Ukrainians were attacking something like this. And this is the edge point, the edge tree line that the Ukrainians managed to get and to take under control. So as you can see, now the Ukrainians are focused to encircle Vesely from the south and from the east, and then to move to block the Russians in Vesely, and then to move further in Giskovo direction. So this is the plan, and most likely today the Ukrainians will continue implementing the plan in the real life. And that's it for this update. Slavic News Channel condemn any violence in the world. Thanks for watching, and please like and subscribe.